Most of us are walking through life carrying an invisible weight that was never meant for us. We are obsessed with the judgment of people who don't even know themselves. We are suffocated by a persona, a social mask that has become a prison. We care about the how, we care about the when, and we care about what happens if we fail. But Carl Jung discovered a secret that the most powerful people in history used to break free. The moment you truly act as if nothing matters, the world finally loses its grip on you. This isn't about giving up. It's about a radical psychological divorce from the expectations of the collective. When you tell the universe, it doesn't matter if I'm misunderstood, it doesn't matter if I lose, and it doesn't matter what they think, something miraculous happens. You reclaim the massive amount of psychic energy you've been wasting on external validation. Jung called this individuation, but for those of us in the second half of life, it feels like a second birth. It is the observer effect in its purest form. When you stop being the puppet of your anxieties, you finally become the master of your fate. If you've been feeling stuck, like you're waiting for a permission slip that never comes, this message is your sign. You have spent decades caring for everyone else's reality. It is time to enter the void of detachment, where your true power, your shadow and yourself can finally reunite. Today, we aren't just discussing a theory. We are giving you the key to the ultimate act of power, the courage to act as if nothing matters, so that everything finally can. To understand why Carl Jung emphasized the need to act as if nothing matters, we must first look at what he called the psychological investment of the ego. Most of us are born into a world where caring is equated with virtue. We are taught that to be a good person, a successful person, or a worthy person, we must care deeply about our reputation, our financial standing, and our social utility. But Jung saw this as a trap. He realized that the more energy the ego spends caring about these external metrics, the less energy is available for the actual work of the soul, individuation. When we talk about acting as if nothing matters, we are not talking about nihilism. Nihilism is the belief that life is meaningless, leading to despair. Jungian non-attachment is the exact opposite. It is the realization that life is so meaningful that the trivialities of the ego's desires are actually a distraction. It is the recognition that the you who is worried about what your neighbor thinks, or whether your latest project will be a hit, is actually a temporary, superficial construct. Jung often spoke about the spirit of the times versus the spirit of the depths. The spirit of the times is obsessed with utility, speed, and validation. It is the part of you that cares in a way that creates anxiety. It is the part that feels like it's running out of time. But the spirit of the depths is eternal. It doesn't care about the 24-hour news cycle or your social media engagement. When you align with the depths, you naturally begin to act as if the frantic demands of the world don't matter, because, in the grand scheme of your soul's journey, they don't. Think about the sheer amount of psychic energy you expend every single day on things that are outside of your control. Jung believed that psychic energy, or libido as he called it in a broader sense, is a finite resource. If you are spending 90% of that energy worrying about the how and when of your success, you only have 10% left to actually create, to think, and to connect with your inner self. This is why not caring is actually a strategic maneuver. It is a process of energy reclamation. When you decide that it doesn't matter if a specific outcome happens, you are essentially pulling your energy back from that outcome. You are cutting the strings that make you a puppet of your own expectations. In this state of detachment, you become what Jung called the objective observer. You are no longer drowning in the ocean of your emotions. You are standing on the shore, watching the waves come and go. For the late bloomer, the person who feels like they've spent decades waiting for their turn, this philosophy is even more critical. There is a specific kind of caring that develops as we age, a fear that we've missed the boat. We care so much about making up for lost time that the pressure itself becomes a block. Jung observed that many of the most significant psychological shifts happen only when the individual gives up on the ego's version of the timeline. It is in the moment of total surrender, the holy indifference, that the path forward finally clears. Detachment allows for the emergence of the transcendent function. This is the psychological mechanism that reconciles the tension between opposites, between who you are and who you want to be. As long as you are caring too much, you are stuck in one side of the tension, usually the side of lack or fear. When you act as if nothing matters, you dissolve that tension. You step into a neutral space where the subconscious can finally deliver the insights you've been searching for. Jung famously said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." But you cannot choose who to become if you are still tied to the version of you that is terrified of failure. By acting as if nothing matters, you are effectively telling your shadow, that repressed, hidden part of your personality, that it is safe to come out. You are saying that you no longer care about being perfect or appropriate, according to the world's standards. This is where your true power lies. The energy you used to use to hide your shadow is now available to fuel your genius. In the second half of life, the goal is no longer to build the house, but to inhabit the self. This requires a radical shift in values. The things that mattered in your 20s and 30s, status, competition, external markers of success, must be seen for what they are. Stage props. When you realize they are just props, you can stop caring if they get knocked over. You can act with a level of freedom that others find confusing or even threatening, because you are no longer playing the same game. This is the ultimate secret of the Jungian path. By acting as if nothing matters, you create the space for the one thing that actually matters to reveal itself. You stop chasing the light and realize that you are the light. You stop waiting for the universe to give you a sign and realize that your own existence is the sign. You are finally free. To act as if nothing matters, you must first confront the most sophisticated lie you have ever told: your persona. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask we wear to navigate the world. It is the good employee, the dependable parent, the successful entrepreneur, or even the struggling artist. While the persona is a necessary tool for social interaction, Jung warned that it becomes a psychological death sentence when we begin to believe that the mask is who we actually are. When we care too much, what we are usually caring about is the maintenance of this mask. We are terrified that if we stop performing, if we stop meeting the expectations of the collective, the mask will crack and people will see the nothingness underneath. But for Carl Jung, that nothingness isn't a void. It is the entrance to the true self. The reason most people are exhausted, particularly in the second half of life, is that the persona is heavy. It requires a constant, draining expenditure of psychic energy to keep it polished and in place. Every time you care about an awkward social interaction, a missed promotion, or a judgmental comment from a stranger, you are pouring your life force into a cardboard cutout of yourself. You are feeding the mask while the soul starves. Acting as if nothing matters is the only way to effectively break the persona. It is a form of psychological iconoclasm. When you decide that the opinions of the collective no longer have the power to dictate your emotional state, the mask loses its glue. You start to realize that the you, who was so desperate for approval, was never actually you. It was a functional adaptation that outlived its usefulness. Jung observed that the first half of life is naturally dedicated to building the persona. You have to find your place in the world, start a career, and form relationships. But the second half of life, the stage many in the Carl Jung daily community find themselves in, is about the dissolution of that mask. If you continue to care about the same things at 50 that you cared about at 20, you are committing a crime against your own evolution. You are refusing to grow into the person you were meant to be. Think about the liberation that comes when you truly realize that nothing matters in the theater of social performance. If you are no longer trying to be anyone for anyone else, you suddenly have the freedom to just be. This is what Jung called the objective presence. When you stop caring about being perceived as smart, successful, or enlightened, you actually become those things in their purest form. The effort to appear is what prevents you from becoming. Breaking the persona is often a painful process because it feels like a loss of identity. We have spent so long caring about our roles that we feel naked without them. This is why Jung spoke of the perils of the soul. When the mask cracks, the ego feels like it's dying. But it's not you that is dying. It is the limitation of you. By acting as if nothing matters, you are facilitating this death so that a rebirth can occur. You are clearing the debris of decades of people-pleasing to find the raw, unedited power of the self. In this state of holy indifference, you become immune to the psychic epidemics of the world. Most people are swept up in the anxieties, trends, and outrage of the masses because their personas are deeply entangled with the collective. They care because everyone else cares. But the individual who has broken their persona stands apart. You see the chaos of the world for what it is, a projection of the unexamined collective shadow. Because you have decided that the drama doesn't matter to your inner peace, you gain a level of clarity and inner authority that others can only dream of. For the late bloomer, this is the secret to the sudden breakthrough. Many people spend 40 years caring and trying to force success through the persona, only to find themselves stuck. It is only when they reach a point of productive exhaustion, where they finally say, "I don't care anymore, it doesn't matter if it happens or not," that the breakthrough occurs. Why? Because the energy that was trapped in the mask is finally released into the work. You stop trying to be great and you start being real. And the world always responds more powerfully to what is real than to what is performed. Jung famously noted that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege is expensive. It costs you your social safety. It costs you the comfort of being liked by people who only liked your mask anyway. When you act as if nothing matters, you are essentially paying that price. You are saying, "I value my own authenticity more than I value your comfort." This is the ultimate act of psychological sovereignty. As you move through the stage of breaking the persona, you will notice a shift in your relationships. Some people will be repelled by your new detachment. They will try to pull you back into the caring trap because your freedom makes them realize their own chains. But others, the right others, will be drawn to you like a magnet. They will see the light of the self shining through the cracks of your broken mask, and they will recognize the truth in you. Breaking the persona isn't about becoming a hermit or being rude. It's about becoming transparent. You still wear a mask when necessary, you still function in society. But you no longer identify with it. You use the persona like a coat. You put it on when it's cold outside, and you take it off the moment you step into the warmth of your own truth. You are no longer the coat. You are the life that inhabits it. By the end of this process, you realize that the reason you cared so much was that you were trying to fill an internal void with external validation. But when you act as if nothing matters, you find that the void was actually a fountain. You no longer need the world to tell you who you are, because you have finally met yourself. In the Jungian framework, the shadow represents everything about yourself that you have deemed unacceptable and pushed into the darkness of the unconscious. It is your aggression, your raw ambition, and your unconventional desires. We often invest a massive amount of psychic energy into maintaining a good or appropriate image because we are terrified of what might happen if our internal governor were removed. We fear that the emergence of these hidden parts would destroy the life we've worked so hard to build. However, Carl Jung's central discovery was that the more energy we spend suppressing these traits, the more power we give the shadow to sabotage us from the dark. When we shift our focus away from external validation and toward internal wholeness, we are effectively reclaiming the fuel of our psyche. This isn't a move toward recklessness. It is a move toward a sophisticated form of inner sovereignty. You are no longer asking for permission to look at the parts of you that you've been running from for decades. For many, navigating the complexities of the second half of life, the habit of over-attending to others' needs has served as a defense mechanism. You may have prioritized social harmony to avoid conflict or cultivated a kind image to mask a deep-seated fear of your own capacity for anger. But by suppressing these negative traits, you have also inadvertently suppressed your vitality. You have become a controlled version of yourself, leaking energy through the cracks of your own repression. The moment you adopt a stance of psychological detachment regarding others' judgments, the fear of your own shadow begins to dissolve. You start to realize that your anger isn't just negative energy. It is the raw material of your boundaries. You see that your selfishness is actually a necessary instinct for self-preservation and the pursuit of your true calling. Jung famously warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By withdrawing your emotional investment from the collective standard, you are essentially performing a manual override on that fate. The shadow is often described as the gold in the dark. It contains the massive amount of psychic energy that you have spent your entire life trying to manage and hide. When you operate from a place of detachment, you stop apologizing for your complexity. You recognize that the version of you that was so desperate to be liked was actually a diminished, hollowed-out version of your potential. The real you is a totality that includes the dark, the fierce, and the unapologetic. In the second half of life, the integration of the shadow is the only viable path to wholeness. You cannot reach the self while you are still tethered to the role of the perfect person. This is why many significant breakthroughs are preceded by a period of productive indifference, a time when the old restrictive structures of the ego begin to fail. This state allows the shadow to be integrated not as a monster, but as a partner. It feels like a dark night of the soul, but it is actually the reclamation of your missing pieces. Think about the lion energy that emerges when an individual finally stops prioritizing the comfort of the flock. This isn't a product of the persona. It is the roar of the integrated shadow. It's the part of you that has finally stopped negotiating with mediocrity and started trusting its own instinct for truth. This level of indifference to external opinion is what allows a leader to emerge from a follower. You aren't becoming cold. You are becoming solid. You are becoming someone who cannot be moved by the winds of fashion because you are anchored in the totality of your being. Jungian detachment allows you to use your shadow as a strategic asset. Instead of being possessed by your anger or your ambition, you wear it. You can be fierce when a situation demands it, and serene when it doesn't. You are no longer a victim of your emotions because you have acknowledged their source. When you declare that the social game no longer holds power over your inner state, you are telling your shadow that it is safe to come out. You are saying, I am no longer afraid of what my reputation might lose, because I am more interested in what my soul can gain. This is the stage where the rare personality finally begins to thrive. You stop trying to fit into the narrow boxes provided by society and you start building your own reality. You recognize that your peculiarity, the intensity that others found too much or too weird, is actually your greatest competitive advantage. By withdrawing your need to be normal, you finally grant yourself the freedom to be exceptional. The energy you once used to hide your flaws is now redirected into your creative fire. This is why late bloomers often achieve more in a few years of authenticity than others do in a lifetime of performance. They are no longer fighting a civil war within themselves. They have brought the dark into the light, and the resulting explosion of power is what the world often mislabels as luck. But you know the truth. It was the result of the courage to stop participating in your own repression. As you move through this process, this detachment becomes a daily practice. Every time you feel the old anxiety of what will they think return, you must pivot back to your inner center. Not because you are indifferent to humanity, but because you are committed to something much larger than a social transaction. You are committed to the birth of your true self, and in that pursuit, the noise of the world is simply a distraction.